December 27th, 2022, Brennan Lee Mulligan, Abria Iyengar, and Erika Ishii tweeted a mysterious link to a website, which contained a countdown to the new year. This, of course, sent the D&D community into a tailspin of speculation, but we were all ultimately helpless to just watch and wait for the launch of a new D&D podcast called World Beyond Number. This D&D podcast would be a host of several campaigns and DM'd by a different member of these lovely folks here, which also includes Lou Wilson, who does not have a Twitter in the year of 2023 because he is an actual sane person, unlike the rest of us with permanent brain rot. The first campaign only has 3 episodes out, so it's the perfect time to jump in, and it's called The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One, which when I first saw the official art, I thought was going to be like a Final Fantasy style game, but after following the Patreon and watching the children's adventure, the true colors of this campaign was shown, which is that it is incredibly Ghibli-core. The best way for me to describe this series is, what if Howl, Kiki, and Totoro all met as children one summer, formed a deep bond, and then after going their separate ways, reunited in adulthood to become an adventuring party. Hello, sign me up. That is all right up my alley. You can listen to Worlds Beyond Number on any podcast streaming service, but you can only get the special children's campaign if you followed them on Patreon. And after listening to the whole thing, I felt really inspired and decided to draw my favorite scene, which is also the scene that made me cry. Oh yeah, this is a speed draw. That's like all I do. If you're new to the channel, hi, welcome, I'm Nathan. And let's go ahead and jump into the process. So minor spoilers ahead, but basically this is a scene that features Grandmother Wren, who is sort of the guardian figure for the 3 heroes during this very important summer. She is a powerful witch, and she has been teaching Ame, who is Erika Ishii's character, the girl with the little bob, witchcraft and important skills, and they are joined in the middle of this summer by Abria Iyengar's character, Suvi, who will one day grow up to be the wizard, and Ursulon, who is Lou Wilson's character, who is the titular Wild One. As a dungeon master myself, I have to just brag for a moment. This podcast is itching such the right spot that no other D&D podcasts are doing for me at the moment, and I think it's because of the size. I love Critical Role and Dimension 20, but the cast are so large. There's something about Worlds Beyond Number and only having 3 people in a party where it really makes the storytelling more intimate. Things kind of are more cohesive as well. There aren't all of these competing storylines happening at once. It's just very organic, and I really appreciate it. And also, can I just say, the soundtrack for this podcast absolutely slaps. It's the most amazing thing. You really feel immersed in the world, and it is very evocative of a lot of Ghibli soundtracks as well. Lately, with the media that I've been consuming, I've been really drawn to worlds that I actually want to visit. So I'm not really interested in going to Mordor or outer space or anywhere scary or icky. I would much rather be at a cottage in the middle of the country with a witch who is my grandmother, which I guess is pretty funny considering this image is very sad. So Grandmother Wren has sort of a curse on her. I won't go into much detail about it, mainly because we don't know a lot about what this thing is with her, but this is a very pivotal moment where all of the children are really concerned for her because she's sick, and they're each doing their own methodology to try to help. So Suvi is looking in books to try to help. Ame is just trying to be really close. There's this really beautiful description of her crawling up into Grandmother Wren's lap and hearing her heartbeat. So that's what I'm depicting here. And then Ursulon is just sort of watching as this outsider because he's a spirit like Totoro. So he's kind of not used to humans and our cultures and what's going on. It was just really heartwarming, and I really enjoyed drawing each of these characters in a Ghibli style. It was very fun and a nice challenge for myself, and I was also really proud of this background. So speaking of Patreon, I have a Patreon. My link will be in the description down below, and usually for these videos, I'm asking my patrons, hey, what are background characters you would like to see in my image? But for this one, I was this is a witch's cottage. What kind of things would you want to see? And everyone was so responsive. It genuinely warmed my heart, because sometimes I'll ask for characters and only 1 or 2 people are really into it. But a lot of people were oh, I would love to see 2 portraits talking to each other. Or one person was I want to see a floating teapot pouring tea, and just all of these amazing things. There was someone who was oh, I have an item from my D&D campaign that's based off of Ambrosia from Hades, so maybe something like that. I don't know. It was just really cool that everybody kind of was all on board for recommending objects, which is something when I first started this channel I never thought I would really do. I kind of thought, oh, people are only gonna want me to draw characters. But yeah, designing a room can be just as fun. Who knew? So you can see now I'm working on a writing desk. This was for like reading books or writing letters. I wanted it to be really old-timey and traditional, and I also wanted to make sure that the wood color of the desk was different than the hardwood floors. There was a little bit of a challenge making sure these wood tones didn't all blend together, which is kind of funny because normally with interior design you want to make sure all your wood tones match, but I was constantly trying to make things cool or more or less saturated because the desk, the hardwood floors, and the rocking chair all could like very easily blend together and just make this image very flat. So I actively tried to make sure that did not happen. Also, I loved adding all these dried herbs, like these little bundles that are hanging from the ceiling is really fun. This is a top-down angle, so the perspective made it a little tricky to make this come across, but I had to cheat it a little bit, but I think it works. Also, I'll just go ahead and say here, Grandmother Wren does not have an official design, but she was really fun to interpret. And so one thing about this is that Brennan has this line where he says, Grandmother Wren is Suvi's grandmother, but I could not tell if he meant literally or if he was speaking metaphorically. Like, I'm not entirely sure, but I think the exact wordage was, you realize that this is your actual grandmother. And you really could interpret that two ways. I'm leaning towards literal because the word actual makes it seem like there's a biological connection, but I could also see the interpretation of, oh, the relationship you have with this woman is just as valid, so she's just as much your actual grandmother as a biological grandmother. But to err on the safe side, I did depict her as a Black woman just to cover all the bases because, if she's related to Suvi, it works either way. And then also, eagle-eyed viewers might notice that her dress is loosely based off of Sophie's dress from Howl's Moving Castle, just to add another little Ghibliism, and I love that dress a lot, and I like Sophie, and she becomes an old lady, Grandmother Wren is an old lady, it just sort of works, it writes itself. I'm really getting into the background now. I really did enjoy doing this teapot. I don't know why I leaned so heavily towards Disney with it. Once you hear Mrs. Potts sing Beauty and the Beast, you can't really go back. I don't copy it exactly, but yeah, it's a porcelain teapot. There's only so much that I could do. I also add these cute little terrariums with amphibians inside, and I'm just gonna say this is a very magical place. So these terrariums are not big enough for these little critters to actually live in. Just, use your mind's eye. They're magically bigger on the inside than on the outside. I don't know. There's only so much room. Just know that they're happy and that they're having a grand old time. Ooh, I also add soot sprites, like from Totoro and Spirited Away. Yeah, I just really wanted to lean into the Ghibli and all of the Patreon suggestions as much as possible. I also really do love these colors. They're so saturated. Normally I'm afraid of overly saturated colors, so I tend to make things a little more dull. I'm not sure why I do that. It just feels safer, but I really made everything very vibrant to show the intensity of this scene. And yeah, I'm glad I pushed myself outside of my comfort zone because I think it really did pay off. I was a little nervous at first before I added the shadows because things looked a little flat, but once I redid the shadows, things really began to tie together and be very grounded. So a win is a win. We'll take it wherever we can get it. I also I made the teapot out of focus, and the dried herbs will be out of focus eventually, just that depth of field could be a little more clear. I wanted to make sure that it was very obviously a floating teacup and teapot, and that they weren't awkwardly on Ursulon's fur. Yeah, let me know in the comments down below how successful I was at that. I think I did a pretty good job. Also with the portraits that are talking to each other, which is of course very magical and very whimsical. I was a big fan. I made one of the portraits be upside down because, like I said, it's a down facing perspective. So by flipping the the portrait upside down, we actually get to see the head talking to the other head. I thought this was really cute, and I liked the idea of Grandmother Wren purposely turning over a living painting just so it could be closer to its friend for conversational ease. It made me really happy to think about the attention to details for that moment. Also, one of my Patreons recommended a alchemy station, and I don't really know what an alchemy station looks like, so I sort of add this circle table and put a piece of paper, scissors, and a rose on it. I'm not exactly sure what this has to do with alchemy, but I just want to say the law of equivalent exchange was adhered to. And yeah, after that, I'm pretty sure I just add some final highlights to really pop out the image, and this is the finished drawing. I'm really happy with how it came out. I absolutely loved the process for making this piece. It was so fun, and it was more painterly and relaxed. It was just very enjoyable, and I'm also the most proud of the colors. If I had to mark anything for improvement, I think my proportions are a little weird. Not so much on the people, but just like the desk compared to the size of the chair. I don't know. Everything is a little bit off, but not so much that it's like distracting. It's just like something small that I'll notice. But let me know down below, are you listening to The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One? If so, I would love to hear everyone's thoughts down below. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, subscribe, and if you really want to support the channel, check me out on Patreon, where for just like $4 a month, you can have your name in the end credits. And anyone at any tier can make recommendations for characters in the back of my speed draws, or in this case, fun little objects to decorate future witches' huts. I'm really excited about it. And yeah, with all that being said, I guess it's time for the end credits. Special thanks to Blurryface EXE, Blue Uwu, Christopher, MOE, Game of Catan on IG, Gay Jarrus, Melon, Pinecone, Prance, Smalls the Sax Jammer, Shenanigans, Thumper Daytime, Tarthalinor, Tuesdays Anyways, and Tuppence Pies. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Nathan. I upload every Saturday, and I'll see you soon. Bye!